This is Molly Storm from Stowe, Ohio, and you're listening to BBQ Central.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
All right, good evening, and welcome to the Really Big BBQ Central Show.
Ooh, this is nice!
And this is the show that talks about all things that are important to the world of barbecue and grilling. The show originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I am your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evenings, a live fire fun and frivolity show. If you would like to get in contact with the show this evening, or you would like to follow the show during off-show hours, here's how you do all that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you get the newsletter coming up in about 12 minutes from now. Exactly the guy that has spawned the craze going across the nation and globe with the BBQ Central's new theme song, BBQ Central Show's new theme song, Get in the Smoke. We will visit with first-time guest and obviously show superfan Heath Bennett. Hotly anticipated. Because I would have otherwise probably not ever have had Heath on the show. He would just remain in the shadows as a listener. We will get the benefit of learning about him, where he lives, how he got into barbecue, how he found the show, and then what inspires a human to go the extra lengths using AI technology and whatever else at his disposal to craft what has become the new high-level theme song of the BBQ Central Show. We'll learn all about it with Heath in just a few short moments. And then we will move to the 9:35 past the hour guest, second Tuesday. And that is Robert Moss, of course. We're going to talk about something that might blow your mind. It is involving, if you got the newsletter, pork ribs. Can you believe that there was a time in our history where pork ribs were roundly rebuffed, shit on, and or otherwise made fun of? I know, shocking to me. So much so that what he is about to relay to you in just about a half an hour or so might blow your mind. But we have come to know and expect this from one Robert Moss, educating us, making us much more knowledgeable and well-rounded barbecue and grilling fans and experts in our own right. If you learn something today, as they say on the Cigar Authority, you might have learned something today that makes you the Cigar Authority. Well, tonight you might learn something that will make you the Barbecue Authority. At least amongst your friends. They're not going to know anything about the story you will hear tonight. Then we'll close the first hour. We will move to the second hour. And in his quarterly appearance, although it's probably been 6 months since he's been on, creator of AmazingRibs.com and taker of the second hour, Meathead. undoubtedly. So, lot to catch up with as it relates to a meathead. In case you didn't know, Meathead has a new book out. Yeah, certainly there's the Alton Brown forward, but who cares about that? All the way down at the bottom, I can't see it. I wrote a blurb. Can you see that? Yeah, that's me right at the end. I made it. Right above semi-famous Dave Anderson. You kidding me? I'm not above that guy, the guy who ruined the Barbecue Hall of Fame one year. The announcements. Shocking. So that's how the show's laying out tonight. Heath Bennett and Robert Moss in the first hour and Meathead in the second hour. Of course, we say good evening to those of you watching tonight through one of our video streaming platforms. You can go to facebook.com/BBQ Central Show, or you can go to YouTube, which is youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. You can also follow me socially on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, all with the handle @BBQ Central Show. And yes, we do have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking everybody, including all guests. Simply and flatly, on the heels of a Malcolm Reed New to You interview last Wednesday as it was released in the podcast feed, do you like Bloody Marys? And 67% of you are saying no. Thank God more than half of you are in your right minds. Because right now, 33% of you are in your wrong minds, even at its most basic drink formation, which is really how it should be. Maybe stalk of celery, maybe olives, and if you're feeling randy, how about a crispy bacon strip that is also in there? All great things to eat on their own. A crudité to eat together? Maybe. In that drink, the worst. The worst. Doctoring it up with horseradish does not help. Putting hot sauce in it does not help. Putting barbecue spices in it does not help. Putting Worcestershire sauce does not help. And the list goes on of things that don't help. Also things that don't help: full packer briskets, rotisserie chickens, racks of ribs, and you name all the nonsense that you've seen go on the side, above, behind, and below Bloody Marys. Trash with a capital T, and 67% of you are agreeing with me, because every show last week was pre-recorded and put into the podcast feed. There is not.
We'll do it live.
Oh.
Andrew.
There is not results of the poll question from last week. There's just not. There's just not. So instead, we'll start here this evening, and many of you asking through the course of the week. So, what did you end up getting at the big corporate dinner because you couldn't make it back to host the show last Tuesday? Well, I did wait and go last to see what everybody else has ordered. Nobody decided to ask for my take on the menu, meat and or otherwise. Also, I was the lowest ranking official at the dinner. There were two owners. One that owns the company I work for. The other one owns the company I sell to. Then my boss, the VP of the truck group. And then it was me. Those three guys all got some form of steak. I opted for the rack of lamb. I'm going back to my hot take from a few years ago, which is this. And I am painting with broad strokes here, so forgive me. But there is a purposeful undercooking of meat across the nation. I ordered lamb medium rare, and it came out like it might have just released its last gasps of life minutes before it landed on the table in front of me. Told my boss after the fact, had it been even a degree cooler in temperature as detected by my mouth, I would have sent it back. Great flavor, but really, how in the fuck can you be off this much? You know what it looks like before you're cooking it. You know the temperature the cooker's running at. You can see how thick it is. You don't want to stick an instant read meat thermometer in that bad boy at any point just to check if you're accurate. And by the way, check for both things, underdone and overdone. We all know if it's overdone, it's got to go in the trash. You have to start over. Increased expense. I get it. If it's under, and it usually is, you put it back on the cooker, you get it up to temperature. By the way, an additional hot take, how many times have you seen something go back? More than once. Generally speaking, after it comes back from the kitchen the first time, customer's not sending it back another time. So the kitchen is safer sending it out underdone and then seeing if they have to do anything further with it. As I've said in the past, most people, while they don't like how their food comes out, won't actually send it back even once because they don't want to be looked at as rude. You want a real hot take? The cards are stacked against you when you eat out. How many times have you been dazzled in the past 10 years when dining out? Exactly. That many times. Heath Bennett is in the green room. We'll get to him here in just one moment. Before we get to him, we'll talk to you about Primo Grills because, as I've said time and time again, it is the summer of Primo for me at my house. I love the ceramic cooker. I love the fact that it gets hot. I love that it retains heat. I love that it is a fuel miser. I love that I can get multiple cooks out of a load of fuel. I'm using lump charcoal, but I will not shy away from a briquette if I need to, if it's an emergency, or if it's an extended overnight cook. What I love most about the Primo is we've gotten away from the round. We've gotten into the oval. So now I can really set up a 2-zone fire, which is what everybody wants to do. It's the best way to cook, the best way to manage a fire. We know all these things. But the Primo is the one you can really execute a 2-zone fire. Only sold through dealers, so please find one near you. Go to primogrill.com, find the dealer locator, then visit that dealer, wherever it is. Touch and feel all the ovals. And then buy the one that best fits your needs. Don't forget to outfit yourself with an accessory. Use the Primo Grill pizza accessory this past weekend. Used something called the Fredstone. Lightweight, gets up to temperature quickly. I'm a big fan. Little learning curve for me on what temperature to run the Primo at in order to get the stone where I want it, in order to get the pizza results that I wanted. But the attachment itself, very easy. Pretty much like every accessory that Primo sells. Pretty easy. So great to use, so fun to use. Glad it's been the summer of Primo, and there's no stopping. Primogrill.com. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram. We're back with Heath Bennett right after this.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Fireboard, makers of Fireboard 2, Fireboard Pro, Fireboard Spark, Fireboard Beacon, the wireless Fireboard Pulse. When you use the Fireboard app, you have total access to all devices anywhere in the world. Visit fireboard.com for more information or call 816-945-2232 with questions. By the way, customer service is great because, not that you're going to know what this is, on the drive motor, there's 2 little thin metal pieces bent to shit. Got in touch with Ted. Ted gave me the support address. I have 2 new thin metal supports coming to support my Fireboard drive motor on my Primo grill here sooner than later, so very excited. about that. It's the great folks over at Fireboard. All right, folks. So a couple weeks ago, you heard it here live on the show,
We'll do it live.
which was the unveiling of what I have now called to be the official high-level theme song of the BBQ Central Show. I was inspired so much, I talked about it publicly on this show, and I basically covertly demanded that the creator at least avail himself for an interview so we could learn all about it. And to my great joy, he was only more than happy to do so. So let's race to the hotline and meet this character. We call him Heath Bennett. Hey, Heath.
Hi, Greg. How you doing tonight?
I'm well. We have a YouTube poll question of the week just for you and all other guests and everybody watching on YouTube. Do you like Bloody Marys?
I do not.
No. 58% of the YouTube voting public, including you and me, do not like Bloody Marys, but our pal Malcolm Reed seems to love Bloody Marys and starting to claw back to a bit of 50-50, which I really like. So let's go ahead and get a few housekeeping items out of the way here before we really get into the most important part of the interview section, which is how this whole thing happened. You've never been on the show before. I don't know you to be a competitive barbecuer or a restaurant owner or anything like that. I don't know anything about you. So for the folks that show up for the first time, let's hit the high-level stuff. Where are you at? What do you do? And how are you a barbecue fan?
Oh, I'm definitely a huge barbecue fan. I live in Rochester, New Hampshire. I just delivered pizza for a living. Other than that, that's about it. I love barbecue, watch all the shows, listen to the podcasts. That's my background.
Would you call yourself a outdoor grill lover? Are you a master, pit master? How do you gauge your wherewithal?
I'm definitely, I do well at it. I wouldn't call myself a master. There's definitely lots of pieces of equipment I haven't cooked on, that's for sure. I just basically have a drum smoker and an Oklahoma Joe offset that I use.
Is it a UDS that you built, or do you have like a pit barrel or a gateway or something like that?
I built one myself, yeah.
Oh, yeah? How old is that?
Actually, I just built it this summer, and it's the best thing I ever did. That thing cooks like a dream.
So, I don't know if you recall this or not, but Texas embedded correspondent Doug Scheiding, I believe, got into the whole ugly drum building craze, a decade ago, maybe even longer than that. And that's how originally he got started. I might be a little off base on that, but I know there was some kind of a manufacturing of UDS for his personal use, maybe even cresting into the beginnings of his competition career, if I'm not mistaken. What drew you to the upright barrel smoker versus, something else?
Actually, years ago when I first saw the Pitmasters on TV, I got into the Barbecue Brethren forum and had read all about the ugly drum smoker in there, and I bought 2 drums, had bought everything to build it, and then it just ended up sitting in my mother-in-law's basement for probably about 10 years. And my wife said, "Are you going to finally do anything with that?" And I went down and checked them out, see if they were rusted, and they looked good. So I finally took them out and built them, and best thing I ever did.
So are you a lump charcoal guy in UDS, or are you a briquette guy, or a mix?
I'm actually briquette. I find I get much better control out of it than I do with a lump. Lumps seem to flare up for me. They don't burn evenly enough.
How did you, are you partial to a brand of charcoal?
I usually either go with B&B, the competition, or I'll go with Blues Hog.
How did you find the BBQ Central Show?
Actually, I started by listening to Malcolm's podcast, and he mentioned you quite a bit on there. And when I heard about you and you gave him tips on how to get his sound going, I decided to give you a try, and I've been listening to you ever since.
How much time do you got into the show at this point?
I want to say I got in roughly right at the end of your T-shirt giveaway that you did a little while back.
So you got a little time.
I actually just missed out. I was, yeah, not bad.
So this was the most recent one where I was taking orders and then putting in the order after that. And sending him.
Exactly,
Oh, okay. So this was what was that, a year ago or something like that? A year and a half.
A little
something
over
like
a
that?
year ago. Yeah. Yep.
So I'm sorry that you missed that. That's too bad. I'm never doing it again. So the chances of you getting your shirt. Are you barbecue medium or like what's your size?
Oh, I'm a little bigger than barbecue medium. I'm getting down to barbecue medium, but I'm a little above that.
So we agree that barbecue medium is 3XL.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Just making sure we all know what our
I'm like a
mediums are.
4XL right now.
All right, we're getting there. So
I like my clothes baggy.
So what other, aside from Malcolm, you listen to all the other barbecue podcasts? And if so, which ones do you find most useful?
I was doing the barbecue radio network for a while, but a couple of the guys left the show and not really a big fan of the format anymore since they're gone. But other than that, it's you guys. This one, lots of great information on what's going on around barbecue scene, and Malcolm's is great for recipes. So between the two, I get everything covered.
Any idea what happened to the barbecue radio network?
I don't know.
Because Andy and Todd, they were a long time. Well, I think Andy was the originator of that show, and then Todd kind of swooped in and took over for a while, and then all of a sudden it's this other guy.
Yeah, Andy was gone for the whole summer, and Todd was doing it, and then he said something about his health. I'm not sure, and said that he needed to step back, and then they just stopped having episodes, and the new guy came in.
Not a fan.
No, he's telling people that thermometers are the key to barbecue. It's the Bible. You got to follow what your thermometer says, which we all know you don't do that.
We don't follow
Use it as
thermometers?
a probe, if anything. Not really. I mean, it's somewhat of a guide, but you want things to be probe tender most of the time.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the official theme song of the BBQ Central Show.
Sure.
Walk us through the process of creating the theme song using AI.
All right. Basically started with Chat GPT. You got to kind of what they call training it. And what that is I use project folders, and in the project folders, there's instructions, and you can set up almost a prompt to tell it how to think and whatnot. And I first started out telling it, you need to think like a researcher, do deep research and all that. And then I had it prompt to do research on you, the past 18 months or all the way back to your career, actually, I should say. And so
you're pretend you're a fact finder, go back through the last 18 years on Greg Rempe and find out all you can?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Wow.
And then I probably got about 5 or 6 pages of stuff. I went through that, found lyrics that I wanted, generated some that I wanted on my own just from listening to the show that I knew. And then I went in, created another project folder with new instructions telling it to, act like a music writer. You're the best music writer. You have all kinds of awards. You're a music producer as well. And then I went and asked it to generate a song based off of the information that I gave you. It gave me lyrics. Some of them I ended up changing around. Some of them I kept. And then I went into Suno and I put those lyrics into there. And
Let
then
me
you can
stop
type
you
into
here just for a second. So
Sure.
you've transitioned platforms here. I don't know if everybody's on the same page.
Yes.
So you were
Suno
originally
.com is
working
different.
on ChatGPT. You got to this particular point, and now you're transitioning into another level of AI.
Correct. This Suno is used for generating songs, music, stuff like that. So I put the lyrics for the song into there. And there's also a different section where you can put in your style. So I did 80s hair band, the kind of instrumentation that you want in there, and asked it to generate the song from there. Sometimes you get good results. Other times, songs are cut off at the end, or the words don't come out right. Or for the instance, the first time I did yours, your name came out as Rempa. So I had to go in and change that so that, I had to do IE so that it actually, did the Rempe in there. You can go into the song once you find a bass that you like, because I had to do 5 or 6 generations just to get a bass song that sounded good to me. And then from there, you can go in and edit it. You can add like solos in there, or you can extend the song even longer. Or if there's a specific section that doesn't sound good, you can totally regenerate that whole section of the song. And then from there, you can just export it and send it out.
So if I back you up to ChatGPT, once you get the lyrics to the song, and as you said, you're editing or you're adding your own. So are you saying, so you get the lyrics, then you say, okay, now incorporate whatever your lyrics are into the song, and it just kind of blends it in?
Yeah, I'll say, like, I don't like these lyrics that you put here. I think they're cheesy. What do you think about this? And I'll put in my lyrics. And then I've actually told it, all right, now think like a producer. Do you think this is a good quality song? Would you record this? And it'll be honest with me and be like, no, that sounds horrible. I would do this with it and whatnot. And then we kind of would go back and forth brainstorming to try to get, the best lyrics we could.
And then you take that over to the musical part and add the music part. So how long does it take you to get just the lyrics set to where you like before you head over to Suno?
It probably took me about a full day.
Wow.
To get it situated.
And then how long does the musicality portion take?
Yours took about a full day. Other songs that I've worked on, I have one that I've been working on for about a week now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Is that for Johnny Mag's podcast?
No, I'm actually trying to make a barbecue themed album. I got a whole bunch of different like barbecue theme songs that I'm trying to do to make them not seem cheesy. Like I've got a Pulled Apart. It's kind of like a Through the Eyes of Pulled Pork, but it's like a love song kind of thing.
Oh, really?
Sounds pretty decent. Yeah. Yep.
So I'm listening to you prompt ChatGPT and Suno and all this other stuff. Do you play an instrument? Have you been in bands? Are you like in music production, stuff like this?
No, not at all. I've dabbled in a few instruments growing up. I played the trumpet for a couple of years, played the guitar for a couple of years, harmonica, blues harmonica. I play a little bit, but none of them I'm very good at. Nothing that would be recordable.
So you're just a fan of using AI and you're able to produce. I started out generating images, a lot of stuff for Malcolm's Facebook group. I did a few images based off of his podcast. And then I really started hearing about Suno, and that sparked an idea. I generated a song for him. It didn't come out nearly as good as this one did. It was the first song I had done. And I posted that in their group, and then I did a couple others, and yours was probably about the 5th song that I tried. It's the best song too, I would imagine.
It so far, yes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's so great. I listen to it at least once a day to pump my ego up.
Nice.
Are you using AI just in general? Or would you rate yourself an expert at AI? So as I have learned more about it over the years, so there's obviously evolutions. It's Chat GPT, this one, version 2, version 3, version 4. I think we're at 5 now, whatever the hell it is.
Yep.
Then there's free versions. Then there's pay versions. I assume Suno is something similar where you can do so much for free, and then if you want a limited access, you're going to pay a monthly or a yearly subscription charge, and away you go.
It is.
Yep. So what I come to understand is what separates really good AI users and shitheads like me is the inability or ability to prompt really, really well. So A, is that true? And then
yes.
How do you become really good at prompting?
The key is definitely in the prompts. And one of the biggest things you can do is just ask ChatGPT yourself. Say, create a prompt for me that will create a song based on these lyrics. And then it will create a prompt saying, use these lyrics, and all the specificities that you want, and it will generate it. I ask it to generate the instructions for the projects folders as well. And they get really specific and break it all down better than I could ever think of.
So you're uploading these project folders into ChatGPT, and then it's breaking those project folders down?
The project folder is something that's actually built into GPT. It's something they have in each one of their chat windows, so that it can kind of keep the base instructions on what you want done in just that folder. So like I have one for creating images, one for creating songs, one just for creating prompts. And then I'll go in there for the prompts. I'll create the ones for songs, or if I want to create an image, I'll have it create that.
Would it be the same as from computer language? So I'm a Windows guy. Hit my little folder thing down on the taskbar. That brings up a bunch of different folders. So I put in a new folder, and then I can put stuff in that folder. And you can keep it separate folders on Chat GPT. I really sound like a dope here, and I apologize, but now I'm motivated to learn.
No, not at all. In those projects folders, you can keep files in there, but the chat windows can't access the files. It's just for you to keep organized what you've done, files that you have uploaded to it, like for programming or something like that. Sometimes you have quite a few different files, and you would keep that in the actual file section, and then in the instruction section, that's where you would have them generate your prompt, and that's just something that you copy and paste from the chat window and paste right into the instruction folder, I guess you would say.
Well, it all sounds incredibly involved and difficult, but I mean, it always does when you don't know what you're doing. So you obviously have it down to a science, and you're turning out what could be top 40 hits back in the mid 80s at this point with that sound. Did you have it try to sound like a particular band or two, or just a hair band genre?
Yeah, I definitely threw some 80s. Whether it actually sounded like those specific guys, I don't know. Like I threw Whitesnake, Def Leppard, Motley Crue, all those guys in there. I said, try to make it sound like them. With Suno, though, you can't actually put names in there because that will screw up copyright issues.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to. For a while, I got away with doing in the style of, but you can't even word that in the prompts now. So you just have to specifically kind of have GPT create a style prompt based off of those guys for those bands.
Well, it's been great hearing it. I've sent it out probably over 100 times at this point, so there's a lot of other people out there that find some value in playing it either in their earbuds, or I rock it out with the car windows all the way down while I'm rolling down the sub-streets of Willoughby, Ohio here. So appreciate everything that you have done in that regard and given us this gift of the BBQ Central Show's theme song. I've nicknamed it "Get in the Smoke." Is that the title, or does it have a title?
Get in the Smoke.
Yep.
Yes, that's the title. Yep, perfect.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Any historical figure. That's a good question. Probably a musician of some sort, like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I love his music. He's probably one of the most listened to that I listen to. I listen to him all night when I'm driving in the car if I'm not listening to a podcast, or if I'm in my room doing some sort of work. But yeah, I love Stevie Ray Vaughan.
What's your favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan song?
I like Lenny. I like the instrumental to it.
You like Texas Flood?
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I love
There's
Texas
many
Flood.
that I don't like.
I love it. One of my favorite ones. All right, we're talking with Heath Bennett. He is the creator of Get in the Smoke, and that is what I'm calling to be the new theme song of the BBQ Central Show. Heath, really appreciate the time and definitely the insight. I think we've all become a little bit more of learned folk here as it relates to AI. And again, appreciate the song. Thanks so much for being a fan, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You got it. Heath Bennett right there. Made the song Get in the Smoke with the help of ChatGPT, initially transitioning to something called Suno, which I don't know anything about, and then basically, let's call it 48 hours of work. when you say 2 days, doesn't necessarily sound like that crazy, but let's break it down to hours. 48 hours of work to get that song. I've heard interviews with like Green Day, some of the most successful bands ever. It's taken 5 minutes to write the song. They knock it out a couple hours later in the studio, dead bang. They got a top 40 hit. So this one, more involved than a lot of hit songs that were made by real bands. So appreciate Heath putting in all the time and effort on that. Get in the Smoke if you need your copy. So you can go back to the show a couple weeks ago and just, it lives on that show. Number one. Number two, email me, Greg, at thebbqcentralshow.com. And in the subject line, put Get in the Smoke song. And then I will send you the new theme song. Very easy. You'll be shocked if you haven't heard how great it is. Not kidding. It's great. Chris in the instant chat, wondering if anybody smokes a cigar while they're watching the show. He's currently smoking an Oliva Nub Double Roast. Chris, I've had nubs before. Fan. More of a McAuliffe guy, if you haven't known that. Usually Jeff and Drizzy has got something lit up as well. He's a big premium cigar guy. Usually something really expensive. All right, Robert Moss is in the green room. We'll get to him here in just 1 second. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the BBQ Central Show.
And we thank Heath Bennett for joining us last segment. My next guest, contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living Magazine, 2023 BBQ Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. Can you believe we're coming up on 2 years in 2 weeks when we put in the class of 2025? We will welcome back our friend who I think we missed last week, Robert Moss. There he is. Hey, Robert.
Hey, Greg. How's it going?
Fabulous. We have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking everybody, including all guests. Do you like Bloody Marys?
I cannot stand Bloody Marys. Right. Absolutely not.
57% of people agree with you and me and Heath Bennett. We detest a Bloody Mary. There is no such thing as a good Bloody Mary, only one that is getting pitched down the drain of the nearest sink. And Amen. Probably the sink is pissed that it is ingesting a Bloody Mary with no ability to reject it. Tonight we're covering a topic, and when I say the protein, people are going to flip out when we actually unearth the atrocities that this meat has had to go through in its lifetime. I am talking about pork ribs. Now, on its face, who doesn't love pork ribs? Probably widely considered to be one of, if not the most popular barbecue protein.
Yeah, it's the iconic barbecue meat. Absolutely.
Unless you're in Central Texas. But even there in Central Texas, they are known for pork spare ribs. I don't know that.
Yeah, it's part of the Texas Trinity. You know, it is. Every single region these days seems to have ribs as part of its tradition, no matter what else it cooks. Everyone does ribs. For as popular as they are present day, for as popular as ribs have been ever since I have been involved, even as the show was originally founded in podcast fashion, all the way back in 2006. And for even years before that, I was a rib lover. There were places like Damon's and other shit chain places that made ribs, were very successful. What is the history of pork rib? Yeah, the ribs is actually, I don't think the history of ribs even made it into my the last edition of the barbecue book, because I really didn't dig into it until much later. But just because I sort of always assumed, ribs, that's just part of the barbecue tradition. It's got to be going way back. I discovered actually ribs are a relatively recent thing in terms of all of barbecue speaking, and it has a lot to do with a bunch of different things. But if you go back over all our segments we've been doing on the history of barbecue and the side dishes, mechanical refrigeration and transportation has so much to do with the shaping of barbecue. And, we're calling back to the 19th century when barbecue was an outdoor tradition. But really ribs go back to before the Civil War, no one was going and buying ribs and cooking and eating them, whether it was barbecue or anything else. In fact, before there was refrigeration, pork, there's only a very short window of the year where you could eat fresh pork. Because, once you slaughtered a hog, how do you preserve it, right? You can't really have fresh pork available, most of the year round. So, if you go all the way back to the hog killing days back in, the early 19th century, you raising pigs. Typically that would happen toward the end of November, early December, when the weather gets cold. That's when you have your hog killings, because you need a couple of good cold days. You wait for the good first frost to come, because you don't want that pork to go bad before you finish slaughtering and everything else. So you get all the hogs, you kill them. And of course, back then they used every single bit of the hog. So the first thing you do is you hang it up, let it sort of bleed out overnight after killing it. And then next day, cut it, start to butcher it down. The hams and the shoulders and the belly, which we call bacon today, would all go into the smokehouse, all the big cuts, to hang in the smokehouse and be preserved. And then that's what you would eat throughout the year. Then they make use of everything else. So the blood would go into blood pudding. You would take all the fat, put it into big vats and boil it down to lard. And then you could preserve the lard and have that throughout the year. And you only had a few things left over back then. You had the tenderloins, the backbone, and the chitlings, the intestines, and the ribs. And those had to be eaten at hog killing time while it was still cold and fresh. You had a couple days to eat all that up. And so they would have these big dinners and everything, hog killing dinners, and ribs were part of that. So back then, ribs were a very special seasonal thing. You'd only have that. You couldn't go have ribs in May or in September. Where would you get them from? You couldn't go down to the store or anything else. So that's sort of stage one. Fast forward to stage two, which is the rise of hog packing and the hog packing industry. Later, Chicago would become the capital of meat packing. But before the Civil War, it was Cincinnati. Cincinnati became the hog packing capital of the world. It was called Porkopolis, popularly. All the pigs and everything would get driven to Cincinnati, and it was still a seasonal thing. Even in the 1840s, you still have to wait till it gets cold enough. They do the hog killings. But what they would do, I think it was 1830s, the four largest hog packing plants in Cincinnati killed something like 2,500 hogs a day.
Wow.
That they would butcher, slaughter, and then they would pack them up in barrels. So what would you do? Well, they would pack the hams and the shoulders into these big barrels. They would render the fat down to lard, put that in kegs. And then they could take the jowls and the hocks and little pieces and stick it down between the shoulders and hams in these barrels, and then pour over it what they call a pickle, which is literally this brine, a salty, sugary brine that would basically preserve the pork in the barrel. Pork barrel politics and everything else all comes from this era. Seal out the barrels, put them on a boat, send them down the Mississippi River for market. And then that's how pork would be sold. You see pickled pork or preserved pork. It would go inland all over the place in the early days of the pork trade. Well, guess what did not fit so well into the barrels? The ribs. And, you're killing 2,500 hogs a day. There's only so many, things. So these ribs started piling up. So in Cincinnati in the 1840s, there are these great newspaper stories about the owners of boarding houses would take baskets down to the slaughterhouse and they would just fill them up with ribs for free. And so they could take them back and cook free rib dinners for the tenants and everything else. But even the boarding houses in Cincinnati wasn't enough to handle all that ribs. So there's these accounts from the 1840s of the slaughterhouses packing up cartfuls of ribs, hauling them down to the Ohio River and just dumping them off the banks into the river.
Oh, no.
To get rid of them.
Holy travesty.
This is the eve of the Civil War. They're dumping ribs in the river because they literally cannot give them away.
No wonder we went to war.
Yes. And then the Civil War came, which I could write an alternative history where the Civil War was actually fought over ribs, but I don't think that's technically accurate. But it's, we'll see what we can do with that. Fast forward after the Civil War, development of mechanical refrigeration, ice, train shipments, everything else. Suddenly, you don't have to pickle your pork and put it on boats and travel it around. You could actually refrigerate it, put it on trains and everything else. You could actually start toward the latter part of the 19th century selling fresh pork year round. So you could slaughter it, put it in, cool it down and all that kind of stuff. So you start getting ribs available for sale elsewhere. And toward the end of the 19th century, you start seeing ribs show up in cookbooks and things like that as sort of economical meat that you could get, just at the butcher shop or wherever else. And, people would start eating it. Now, if you've been listening to all the previous segments, you know that the early 20th century, when the rise of barbecue restaurants began, first this was informal stands and then restaurants, etc. Well, one of the big things that took off in the, right around the time of World War I were ribs. So cooking ribs at barbecue stands, you start to see these things show up. They were really cheap. You could get like a pound of ribs, cooked ribs for 30 cents or something like that. 1920s come along and you have barbecue stands. You got Prohibition. All of a sudden, you get all these rib stands throughout the Midwest, in particular, like everywhere where all the hog, like Iowa is huge for these, where guys would go. You could get a big old platter of ribs, you get a whole bunch of beer. During Prohibition days, there are all these great raids on the Prohibition stands. Babe Ruth became a huge fan of barbecue ribs in the 1920s. It's a great story. 1928 World Series in St. Louis, the Yankees sweep 4-0. Last game was in St. Louis. On the train on the ride back to New York, Babe Ruth brought on 50 pounds of ribs and what the newspapers described as an amber fluid that foamed when poured into glasses. So whatever that could have been, who knows? But apparently, Babe Ruth became a huge rib fan, and it sort of went toward his ever growing middle as he's got further along in his career. But the 20s, ease into the 30s. Ribs become big, but they really took off after. Well, actually, in the 30s, rib stands became rib joints. Became like Hollywood stars started ducking into these famous rib joints after World War II. Not only did ribs become just we had rib houses everywhere, became very popular meat. Backyard barbecuing is taking off. We talked about that. Ribs were a very popular cut, and guess what? The price of ribs in the 1940s, 1950s just starts going up and up and up. And it's been that way ever since. So it went from being like, this meat you couldn't give away in the space of a century, became one of the pricey meats on the market because everyone wanted to eat ribs, and it's been a barbecue staple ever since.
So it's just been demand driving price up ever since?
Yeah, ever since then. The St. Louis butchers in the 1940s came up with the St. Louis cut rib, which I sort of traced back. The first time I could find it, I think, was 1947, where they would take a spare, your normal slab of spare ribs, cut off the rib tips, and you have these really neatly trimmed ribs, which they could sell for even a higher per pound price because they were becoming very popular. And that's when rib tips became sort of a staple of St. Louis and Chicago and other places, because that became the cast off meat. And so the rib tip sort of followed behind the spare ribs. But yeah, all driven by demand and the popularity, and driven by barbecue and then the desire to have smoked, pit cooked ribs.
So rib tips are popular in St. Louis and Chicago because that's where a lot of packing was happening. So
a lot of packing houses going on. Yeah. Right. And same thing. There's some great interviews, like the South Side of Chicago has all these great rib joints. And there's some great interviews with the guys from the 60s, 70s. They would actually drive. I can't remember which one it was. It could have been Lim's, could have been Argybe's, but the owner would drive actually down to the packing houses down in Southern Illinois, because he could drive down there and just get boxes and boxes of rib tips for super cheap, because there's not much they could do with it. And he'd drive back up and sell them, cook them and sell them cheap. And it's just part of the staple of, you can find lots of different places, but particularly in Memphis, St. Louis, and in the South Side of Chicago, rib tips are still really, really huge.
In the early 1900s, as ribs have turned the corner from, getting dumped into the Ohio River, which is a shame. Is there a common way to cook these, or does region also play a part in that?
I don't know when it diverged. I know from like Memphis, I found some articles about John Mills, who was sort of a predecessor of Rendezvous. Was a great rib king right off of Beale Street in downtown Memphis. He cooked his hot over a charcoal fire. I think it's about an hour and 20 minutes of basting with a spicy sauce. And that's sort of the Memphis-style rib today and the Alabama-style ribs today. So somewhere along the line, you got this divergence. You've got sort of the Texas-style rib done in the offset smoker. That's where you do it, 5-6 hours, wrap them midway. They're slow smoked and all that. But then you've got the hot and fast method, which is what if you go to like Dreamland in Tuscaloosa or Archibald's in Northport, Alabama, or even the Rendezvous, they have these massive brick pits and they have raging charcoal fires or wood fires in the case of Alabama. And it's probably 2 feet above it, but they're cooking those things in sometimes less than an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, very hot and fast. A very, very different style of rib, and it's directly over the heat. So it's very different than the offset. So those ribs diverged at some point. Of course, you have the dry rub, and the basted ribs that came along as well. But I think the big difference is, do you cook them hot and fast or low and slow?
So you've been to any number, if not all, the rib places across the country in your lifetime. You've had all the different styles of ribs. What's your favorite style?
My favorite style is what I would call, it's a newer, I don't know if it's new or a renovate or re-evolving style. 2 places that come to mind: City Limits in West Columbia, South Carolina, and Mama Jean's Barbecue in Roanoke, Virginia. And I'm sure there's some other folks who are doing it. These are sort of new schooler, craft guys. They sort of got intrigued by the idea of the direct heat ribs. They're not doing them like Alabama, so they're not like doing quite hot as fast and crusty, but they're not doing on offset smokers. They're actually taking basically, they're doing burn barrel style like you might for a whole hog, sprinkling coals underneath them. Elliot Moss actually at Elliot's Barbecue in Florence is doing similar ways, and then they're cooking their ribs over direct heat, and the flavor for them is just incredible. You sort of get this great texture, but you get this great smoky char on them. And so that's absolutely hands down my favorite way of cooking ribs. And it's a fairly new one. You don't see too many people doing that. I've got to say, I do have a fondness though for the Alabama and Memphis style sort of for hot and fast rib as well. Nothing wrong with the classic Texas offset style, neatly trimmed and all that kind of stuff, but they just don't have the flavor punch that you get from those direct heat ribs.
Is Rodney Scott a sprinkler of charcoal as well, like cooking them like he would his hogs, same pit and all that stuff, just filled with ribs?
Well, what's funny is that there were no such thing as ribs. Ribs cooked separately at the old Scots in Hemingway, and because they were cooking whole hogs. And back in the old days, you could eat ribs, but you would just pull the rib meat right out of the hog. And actually at Rodney's, or at Scott's up at Hemingway, you could go actually get ribs off the hog, where they would actually cut them out of the whole hog. Wow. and sell them to you, which was excellent. When he opened his spot in Charleston, he may have even started doing this when he was still up at Hemingway. He started doing ribs additionally. I think he does do them on the direct heat pit. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure he does them similarly, but that's something he started doing pretty much later. Because ribs were not super common in Carolina barbecue joints up until past 10 or 15 years. Most places didn't have them. They're cooking pork shoulders or cooking chicken, but it was rare to see ribs. That was much more of a Memphis style kind of thing. That has come along later. But yeah, Rodney does them now. I think he does them in a direct heat pit, but that was something he sort of adapted, to meet the popular demand, as opposed to something that they traditionally did at the old Scott's Hemingway.
You got a list coming out here pretty soon, don't you?
I do. I've got the top 50 list. It will come out before the next time I'm on the show. Not exactly sure, but sometime this month for Southern Living, or our top 50 list. And literally the list is done. The ranking is the 50-year pick. The rankings are done, but I'm finishing up all the write-up part and trying to go through and explain why, try to justify the rankings for everything, about to ship that off this week. So it will come out sometime in the next week or two. you can watch robertfmoss.com or Robert F. Moss on Instagram if you want to see that. And I think it's going to be a little interesting list this year, a little bit different than the past years.
How many states are you spanning with picks?
Well, you'll be happy to know it's a fewer number than in previous years. We are made the difficult call to not include Missouri in the South, and so
wow.
Which I know seems radical. It's funny now. Like when we first started doing it, why do you include Missouri? Well, because Kansas City and St. Louis have great barbecue traditions, and these aren't necessarily southern cities. But at the time we were doing it, where else would you go? That was about the edge of the barbecue world, and so we would sort of sneak them in there. But now, if you're going to do Kansas City, why not do Minneapolis, Minnesota, which has some great barbecue joints, or Arizona or Los Angeles? So we certainly had to draw a line. And so Missouri now, there's great barbecue now all over the United States. So we're going to focus just in the South. So that will be a little bit tighter geography. That does limit it down. Another change this year, most times I've done the list, there haven't been that many places that have closed and fallen off, but there's a good half dozen of places that were on previous top 50 lists, maybe not the last one, but certainly in the last couple, who have closed, in the past year or two. So that's slimmed down the number as well. At the same time, there's a whole new crop of brand new places that have opened up in the last couple of years. And the other big phenomenon I noticed doing it this year, as I was traveling around and revisiting, there's so many places that have expanded their operation, maybe opening bigger location, moving to a bigger location, or adding stuff to the menu, adding, bars, or adding different things. So definitely expansion is a theme. So I've got places that were pretty good before, but then they've expanded what they're doing and they're even better. So I would look for this list. Some of the old favorites going to be on there, but the order is going to be shaken up a little bit. There's going to be a lot of new faces on there, and I think the top 10 may raise a few eyebrows.
All right, so we'll look forward to that. It will be released. We'll be able to talk about that when we are in October.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I think the October. Yeah, we should. It'll definitely be out by the October segment. Hopefully by then I'll take in all my beatings on social media and we'll have recovered my pride, and then we can come on and.
All right, we'll keep the best beatings. We'll keep the best beatings here for you locally.
I'll have to come take the beating from you. So
that's right, no doubt. All right, well, we look forward to that. As always, appreciate the great information, and we will see you in October.
All right, thanks, Greg.
You got
Talk
it.
to you then.
There he is, Robert Moss, robertfmoss.com. If you would like to keep track of the list and its release, you want to see who made that list. Of course you do. Everybody loves lists. I wanted to ask him, how much weight does his list throw around compared to the Texas Monthly? And again, TM is just in Texas. Of course, we know that. I could probably ask Daniel Vaughn that next week, because he will be on the show, believe it or not. Confirmed as of today. All right, we will head back and close up the first hour. So stick around, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Robert Moss, easily the smartest man on the show. I might nominate him for 2025 BBQ Central Show's Guest Hall of Fame and have him be the first one in twice. He's that good. I don't know if anybody knows barbecue history like Robert Moss. Certainly he has written books on the topic. He wrote a book, then he revised the book that he wrote with more history. It's history, not his story. If you know what I mean. Shout out to Public Enemy. Chuck D, what up? All right, we are pointing to the second hour. By the way, if you want to keep track of the Southern Living Top 50 release, robertfmoss.com, Robert's website, track there, or Robert F. Moss on the social media. As I was saying, we are pointing to the second hour. Go ahead and refresh your libation. You're listening and watching the BBQ Central Show right here on the BBQ Central Network. Stick around. We'll be right back.